To the minutes from the last meeting.
I'll move that the minutes from July 17th be approved.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, so our first item, Henry.
Mr. Chairman, actually, yeah.
Yes.
Is Commissioner Eggers expected to be here today?
I guess he's coming in late.
Because I know the bus purchase is something that he's very interested in talking about. Well, in general, over time. So is it possible that we move that item further down so that he can be part of that conversation?
Okay, that agree with everybody?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Armored Car Services, Al.
Good morning, sir. I apologize.
I know you thought Henry was going to.
Yes, sir.
We all did, that's right.
Good morning, Commissioner Al Burns, Director of Procurement and Contracts.
Thank you.
Just want to give a little bit of brief background on this. As you know, or you may not know, we have Armored Car Service to pick up our revenue from the count room here on campus and our other satellite locations throughout the area. In May 31st, we released the RFP. It was issued in compliance with all the PSTA procurement policies. It was posted on Bonfire and Demand Star. On July 16th, we received two proposals, one from Mid-Florida Armored ATM Services and Brinks Incorporated, which is the incumbent. There's a table below that shows you, without a shadow of a doubt, how the evaluation committee scored. They ranked Mid-Florida at 877 points and Brinks at 560 points. Mid-Florida Armored ATM Services Incorporated, price proposal was determined to be fair and reasonable, and after responsibility check, it was determined they have the capacity to perform the work and therefore eligible for award. On a side note, I'm very pleased to inform the board that they are also a locally owned company here in the region. The recommendation is approved a 2-year contract with 3 one-year options with Mid-Florida Armored and ATM Services and an amount not to exceed $150,000, and recommend authorizing the Chief Executive Officer to exercise the 3 one-year option periods.
Okay, any questions?
Yeah, I have-
Yeah, go ahead, Rich.
How long have they been in business, Mid-Florida?
I'm gonna answer shooting from the hip, but I'll make sure I clarify this. I think they've been in business since the early 1990s.
Okay, that's all I want to know.
Yeah, any other questions? Yeah, Commissioner Sloan?
It's funded by the operating funds. Is it within the current budget for those services? Okay, thank you.
My question is similar, any other questions? My question is similar to Commissioner Cox. It's not anything that's critical, but I'm not familiar with Mid-Florida. I don't see their trucks driving around and that kind of thing the way you do some of the other companies. So can you give us some idea with regard to the magnitude of the company, you know, the number of other entities similar to PSTA, as well as any public entities that use their services, that kind of thing?
Yes, sir. Fortunately, I had the pleasure of working with Mid-Florida when I was at another transit agency here in Florida. I visited the count room. It's almost like Fort Knox going into their facility. Additionally, they also do business with Broward County, and they also last year was awarded the contract for Miami International Airport. So even though they're a small locally owned company, they do have the infrastructure to be able to perform what we'll require. Additionally, part of procurement's check is to do a responsibility check. We check on SAMs, EPLS, which tells you whether or not someone's debarred. For this, we did a background check from a financial perspective to make sure that they're financially able to perform the services, and everything came back clean, sir.
Okay. All right. If there are no other questions,
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion for armored car services to Brinks, Armored Floor, excuse me.
All right.
Second.
All right, second, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, passes unanimously. Thank you, Al.
You're welcome, sir.
All right, next is legal services, so we'll talk about those guys.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to jump straight into the procurement. There's background there, but I'll jump it straight into the procurement portion of this. And I'll be kind of personal with it. Since I came here at PSTA, I've developed a very good working relationship with Mr. Zimmet and Nikki Day from BMO, and it's an excellent working relationship that the procurement has with them. And according to the procurement rules, Florida Statute 287.057, legal services are not required to go out for competitive solicitation. However, what we did do is we entered into negotiations with BMO on their labor rates, specifically Alan and his, general counsel and his staff. In June 2019, we concluded those negotiations, and the areas that we negotiated were the term of the new agreement, conflict of interest, the overview of the services, succession plan, and the labor rates. This contract is funded by operating funds, and the recommendation that I'm bringing before you today is recommend approval of an agreement for legal services with BMO for 5 years in amount not to exceed $1,350,000. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Okay, questions?
What are we paying now?
$2.30 an hour.
Okay, and that totals roughly annually?
Are all legal services for every attorney that we use,
Well,
just for BMO?
Yeah,
Roughly $200,000 to $250,000 a year.
okay. So, it's up a little. Say it's 250, 5 years. 1.25, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, I'm doing the math same as you, yeah, okay.
I'm looking up their contract right now, so to make sure I give you
The hourly rate, Al, is $2.30 an hour.
Okay.
Alan knows I check his bills every month.
You know better than I do.
Mr. Chair, if I can,
Yes,
I mean, we're looking at the number. Obviously, we'd hope that, since it's billable by the hour, we would not have any legal services requirements.
Right.
PSTA, but that just has not been the case for the last 35 years.
Right.
Probably 100 years.
Right.
So,
okay.
and Alan has been here almost all 100 years. There is a new feature that BMO offered to PSTA that we're going to take advantage of, where rather than a set rate per hour for every attorney at BMO, we might use, there's now a lower priced associates, is that what it's called?
Right.
Associate rate
3B, we skipped.
that we now have, we're able to take advantage of for maybe some of the, like a review of contracts and stuff in the procurement area and things. I know they've offered that to some of the other public sector clients, and so that has the ability for us to maybe save some money.
Okay, yeah. All right. Okay, what do we have here? You got what you need, Al?
Yes, the current contract attorneys are $340 an hour, law clerks, $155 an hour, paralegals, $145.
Okay. Now, the
Did you say
rate that you're
340?
talking about for an associate is...
340 is not right.
That's not right.
Than your last quarter? Is that right?
Now, the current
Is
rate
that like a
is
mixed rate?
The current rate is $2.30 an hour for all attorneys.
Okay.
And then what we proposed was a
Okay.
split rate so that associates would charge less.
Okay.
Largo went to that method 2 years ago, so I offered it to Brad and Al this year.
Mhm.
I don't remember the exact numbers, but 340 is not correct.
Okay.
Um,
Okay. All right, Commissioner Schulman?
So obviously, I think we're all familiar with Alan, because I think we've seen him at the board level. Who are the other staff members, the other attorneys? How many of those do we interact with? You know, thinking about the succession plan, but also, you know, who do we actually use on a regular basis for services?
Want me to answer it, Brad, or you?
To whomever would like to.
So, and Nikki Day was, I think, covered the last board meeting. She's a shareholder with the firm. She's been with me for 7 or 8 years now. I'm board certified in city, county, local government by the Florida Bar. So she's my main backup. And then you use 2 associates in the firm, Isabella Sobel, who's a 5-year lawyer, and Kimberly Hendy, who's a 4-year lawyer. So they do some of the contract review, handle some of the more minor litigation that we get into, that we handle. And so that's pretty much the way it's set up.
David Miller.
Oh, and then for labor, we use David Miller, who's one of our labor and employment lawyers.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Who does the litigation, let's say with a bus accident or something like that? Does that
Yes,
come out of the?
that's another
That comes
firm.
out of the insurance
That
part?
comes out of the insurance,
Yeah,
and
okay.
that's Una Salzman Jensen.
All right, so the litigation you're dealing with, Alan, then is primarily if somebody comes after PSTA on an issue involving,
So, for example, the First Transit
Mhm.
litigation over the procurement,
Yeah.
we get sued over a lot of little things, like garnishments, when one of our employees gets into financial trouble and somebody wants to garnish their wages, they have to sue PSTA in order to get an order to garnish the wages, so we represent PSTA in those. We get sued over the production of bus videos frequently because the law requires that we keep those confidential, and people don't like when we tell them the law tells us we have to keep them confidential, and they end up suing us over that, so we represent in those. So right now, most of them are relatively small. The First Transit, you were on the board, you remember that was one of the bigger cases, and then, so it's all the non-personal injury cases.
okay,
Okay, so, and the labor cases, that's the other ones that
okay.
we generally handle.
Any other questions?
The only insurance.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
The only insurance-related work that they do is the employment law.
Okay.
So if we have an employee that were to have a claim under employment practices liability,
Yes.
we do use Mr. Miller for that.
Okay, got it. Hey, thanks very much. Okay, any other questions? Commissioner Eggers?
Bryant Miller Oliver, when we went out and secured their services in 2013, looks like 2013, did that go out for an RFQ at that time?
No, that's when I left my old firm and went to
So there,
BMO.
so there hasn't been an RFQ process in how long?
Since the FTA changed their rules and didn't require an RFP. So that's been a while. But it used to be when we got operating grants, the federal regulations required all services contracts to be bid out. But they dropped that requirement when they stopped providing operational grants, so that was some time ago.
Okay, thank you.
All right, go ahead, motion.
Move to approve the agenda item for the legal services agreement.
I'll support that.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Thanks, Alan, for the
Thank you.
clarification. Okay, Commissioner Eggers, we postponed talking about the bus procurement until you arrived, because I know you would have some questions on that area.
I'm so glad you waited.
As a president,
Yeah.
president for you.
So, let's move forward with that. So, Henry, you want to fill us in?
Sure. Good morning, Henry Lupiasek, Director of Maintenance. So This is one agenda item. There are two action items contained in it, so there'll be two recommendations presented, which will require two votes by the committee. So the first action item before you is for the purchase of the buses for the Central Avenue BRT. And I'll turn it over to the Director of Projects, Abhishek Dayal, to just give a quick recap on where we are.
All right, good morning, Finance Committee. Good morning, Mr. Chair. So last month, if you recall, the PSTA board, after a lot of discussion and staff presented some ridership information, directed staff to consider 9 40-foot buses to support the Central Avenue Bus Rapid Transit project. And to keep the project in schedule, we are seeking action from this committee. And I'll turn it over back to Henry to talk more about the buses in general and the procurement option.
Sure. So, for those new to the committee, PSTA, along with other Florida transit agencies, purchases heavy-duty transit buses off a consortium-style type of procurement. Generally, what happens is there is a lead agency that is selected to carry out the procurement physically and do the contract award. Previously, it was Orlando Lynx, and they've done it for the past 10 years. This time around, there was a new lead agency. It was the Jacksonville Transportation Authority. JTA, as they're commonly known as, and they did conduct the solicitation process. There was a contract award. It was a 2-year base contract with Gillig, which is our buses that we have pretty much in our entire fleet. And there was the ability for 3 one-year option renewals. I'll ask Al, he did a review of the entire solicitation to make sure that it was in compliance.
It's fully compliant.
So it is fully compliant with all of the standard FTA regulations for the purchase of rolling stock vehicles for this. So in your packets, you will see a vehicle project cost section. So the buses will be ordered from Gillig, that is who is with the contract. And because these are for the BRT service, they will be hybrids, they will be 40-foot, and they will include the standard amenities that you find on BRT type service vehicles, passenger information displays that will have accommodations for 4 interior stored bike racks. They will have equipment to allow for the transit signal priority system that's going in. The rear doors will be extra wide. Standard doors on our buses that we buy are 34-inch. These will be 56-inch. You may hear me refer to them as plug-style doors. Reason for that is to aid with faster boarding and alighting of passengers. There'll be the fare validation systems that are going in our buses, along with what I like to refer to as exterior appearance enhancements, some additional roof flares, there'll be some fender skirts, really to make the bus look different because it is a completely new type of service out there. It's a brand recognition for that. In your packet, the cost per vehicle will be $832,000. You see item 1 there. Total cost of the 9 buses, which will come from Gillig, will be $7.488. And in lines 2, 3, 4, and 5, you will see some additional equipment. This is standard stuff that we do with every bus. We do put in 2-way radios and Wi-Fi's. There may be some additional graphics and branding for these vehicles. One thing you'll see is there's a lot of ITS equipment on this bus, the passenger information displays, the traffic signal prioritization. We're going to have to integrate all those new systems. And then, as is required, whenever you purchase vehicles with federal funding, you have to perform a pre-award and a post-audit inspection. Also, we have resident inspectors at Gillig watching the buses being built, notating any issues to be corrected at the plant. So the recommendation for this action item is recommend the approval for the purchase of 9 40-foot BRTBA series electric buses from Gillig at a total not to exceed 7.5 million. And the additional items after post-delivery for 150,000. So the total not to exceed project cost for the buses and the equipment is 7.65 million.
Mr. Chairman? Yes, go ahead.
Can,
Commissioner Bennett.
you are the chief financial officer, tell us how those are funded, gonna be funded?
Well, those are being funded through a variety of sources, but primarily FTA on that. Yeah. From the
So how
Federal
much
Trade
of that,
Administration.
7.6 million is coming out of the
49.
PSTA budget?
49. So we'll have money from FTA at 49%, PSTA and FDOT will go into that.
Correct.
And we currently have that in the budget.
Some number like 30% comes out of the PSTA budget?
It's split, I believe, 25% for the state, 25% roughly for PSTA, and the other roughly 50% from FTA.
Okay.
Okay, Commissioner Eggers?
Yeah, and, we had a sheet here that compared, I guess, electric versus the BRT, excuse me, the hybrid that you're proposing, right? And because we have, there's a lot of conversation going on right now about funding additional transit, finding sources for funding of additional transit. I'm going to continue asking the question about what would a like-kind new diesel for each bus cost us? And is that allowed under this grant that we're getting, number one? Is it allowed? And if so, we'd certainly like to see what that alternative is. This board needs to understand, as we approach the end of our reserves in 2021 or whenever it is, it seems to be a moving target, 2022, somewhere in there, that we need to understand that we can slow the process down with each decision that we make or not. So I'd like to understand, first of all, if diesel is allowed, and if, I know this board's not going to vote for it, but I think they need to understand the financial ramifications of it. And if it is allowed, what would those 9 like-kind diesels cost? Thank you.
Al, does that involve rebidding?
No, sir.
Do we have some figures?
So overall, the cost of diesel buses is less than a cost of a hybrid or electric bus, to the tune of approximately $200,000. Even if they were diesel buses, they'd have to have the same additional equipment for the BRT. Now, as committee members have heard me talk about at previous discussions for bus replacement, there's a lot of benefits to continue purchasing hybrid electric buses. One is that it's continuing with the standardization of the fleet. We've been purchasing hybrid buses since 2009 at PSTA. So there's definitely benefits to continue with standardizing the fleet. These buses, the BA series, are the same chassis and the same electrical systems and the same propulsion systems that we've been buying for the past 3 years. They do have a demonstrated track record of reliability, especially for what PSTA uses its buses for in service. I refer to that as duty cycle. There is a distinguishable difference between the way a diesel bus operates and the way that a hybrid bus operates. On a hybrid bus, the duty cycle on the engine is reduced, simply because the engine does not need to rev up and down so much. Our newest hybrid buses actually function at a consistent 1,200 to 1,500 RPM. With that, there is a verifiable higher miles per gallon rating on a hybrid electric bus than there is a diesel. Typically, diesel buses in transit applications are still averaging about 3.8 to 4 miles per gallon in service. Combined with our heat in Florida, the climate, that can impact miles per gallon. I'll talk a little bit more about the difference between that. The reason why hybrid electric buses function better in this climate and for us with our duty cycle is because on a hybrid electric bus, the accessories, the air conditioning, the compressors, the climate control systems, the power steering, the air compressors, all of those systems that used to be belt driven have now become electrified accessories. So that's no longer drawing on the engine, okay? Those are electrified, they come off the batteries. That's what produces the higher miles per gallon. So while the upfront cost for a diesel bus is lower, the long-term operational cost is what pretty much washes out that initial upfront capital cost. So there are savings in the long term that we have seen running hybrid electric buses.
I appreciate that, and I just, again, I'm not talking about the long term. I'm talking about 2-3 years. And the other thing is that, and again, I think before Brian Scott left, he had asked for some information as to our exposure when our buses are getting accidents for the electric, hybrid, and diesel. What types of costs, similar accidents, similar issues, what kind of issues are we going to find? Since we're kind of taking care of that for the most part ourselves, when you have an accident with a diesel, are you talking 50,000 and a hybrid 75,000 and 100,000? Are you pretty much the same? I think he was expressing some concern that we have a little bit more exposure to getting them back if they have a problem, an accident. So again, not part of our normal routine maintenance, and I understand that. I appreciate your thoughts on the things you said, so maybe you could bring that. But what you're saying, just so that I'm clear, on the capital cost per is, you're saying it's $650 now, not $550, because I had heard $450 at one point. Now I heard $550, and now you just said it was $200,000, so that makes it $650 for a diesel. That's what you're saying.
Approximately. So over the years, contracts have come and gone. Previous estimates were based off the former Lynx contract. That was a 5-year-old contract. We're in a brand new contract. Costs have escalated. For this particular action item, understanding that the buses will have additional equipment on it for the BRT, that's about right.
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm comparing apples and apples, that's all. So that when we did this before, there was a wider gap between a diesel and a hybrid. But I think what you're saying is over the years, at least I think I'm hearing, that those differences have reduced.
Yeah, a little bit. They have reduced, yes.
So
The other thing I'll add is the cost for hybrid buses have reduced, but the cost for diesel buses, just because of the stringent emission requirements now that we call those Tier 4 emissions, there's a lot more equipment for the exhaust offset and also the treatment. Those after treatment systems have become very complex. The EPA from the federal level has really required that diesel emissions are at the lowest they have ever been. So much to the fact that diesel emissions today are probably lower than what is coming out of an automobile, a gas-powered automobile. And that's how stringent they are.
So the good news and bad news about that is, the good news is that they're a pretty, they're not like the old diesels as far as the environmental concerns.
Right.
The bad news is the cost difference is shrunk.
Right.
Between that and the hybrid.
Right.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I just have a comment,
Ross?
comment and then a question. Southwest Airlines, going to what you said about the maintenance issue when you have, Southwest flies all on 737s, no other kind of equipment. And they're very successful in their maintenance program. And it's because of parts and familiarity to the equipment too, and I like that. And that's one reason I lean towards the hybrid. And also, I just want to ask another question of Abhishek. Our fare validation, where are we on that? With the Flamingo, is that going to be the way we're going to?
That's still the assumption here, that
Yeah.
since we're already working with HART and other agencies
Right.
on developing this Flamingo Fare program,
Right.
we would essentially incorporate that as part of the.
Because a lot of people pay cash to get on the buses now, and that's not going to be really possible with the.
Correct. I mean, we're having lots of debates about that.
Yeah.
Exactly all the features of the BRT and how the fares will be paid. But
Okay.
one thing is pretty certain is these vehicles will not have fare boxes.
Okay.
They will just have the Flamingo readers at both doors. So both doors will open up at every station, and like a train.
Right.
And then you can get on in the back door. You can get on either door, and tap your fare card or your phone.
Okay.
You can wave it near
That's
the
good.
airport.
And the next, one more thing, how are we going to differentiate the visibility of this bus?
It's going to be unbelievably visible per Whitney. Whitney is.
But like a different color, or what are we?
It's.
Okay, good.
There's also a different style.
It'll have a vibe.
Right, good. Just so somebody
The
knows.
disturbance in the force.
If the marketing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner
Yeah,
Urban.
unless you have a question, go ahead.
I did.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot.
So I was hoping, so Henry, you shared that it's about $200,000 less for the diesel, but that is made up over time versus for operational savings. So I was hoping, Debbie, you could share your perspective on using the $200,000 now from our capital budget versus those operating costs from our operating budget, and how that affects our health over the near and longer term.
Well, fuel continues to be volatile. Right now, it's in our favor. So, for the diesel pieces of our fleet, it's a good thing. But those are the things that, as you know, as we're looking into possible recession, et cetera, that could really skyrocket. So the more we put into the hybrid components and the hybrid buses, I think the better off we will be from the long run. And I think the long run is important as well as looking at the near future.
So does this, the 200,000 that we're talking about, just
Change the difference.
right, is for our deficits in the near term, is that better to be coming from our capital budget? From our, or will that, if we went with diesel instead, and we started, so we had a higher operating cost now, does that hurt us in the short term, intermediate term, long term, or is it neutral, is it beneficial?
Well, it hurts us in the short term and works out to be about neutral in the long term.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all coming from the same source. Well, our available federal funds for capital programs or the operating.
And so if we spend less on a diesel bus for the BRT, I'll be spending less of my capital reserves on it, and I'll be spending more on the other side for operating costs. So we might have some small short-term benefits. Long-term, I think they'll probably, as you said, most of the studies say break even, perhaps.
I mean, this chart was prepared based on, as Commissioner Eggers mentioned, the discussion at the last board meeting was about, well, maybe these vehicles should be electric. And what this chart shows is that we're really not in a position right now, although we believe that the trend is to go more and more all electric, that hybrids are a transition to that, but the future is going to be more and more electric vehicles. The fact of the matter is that there's an infrastructure cost to going electric here at PSA's facility. I mean, this facility was built to have electrical power for the lights and the computer and the Wi-Fi, hopefully, not to fuel the buses. And so a major upgrade in the amount of electricity we get here. And we're working really hard on coming up with a plan so that we can get to this electric future. So these numbers, these big infrastructure numbers, wouldn't be necessary anymore. And then the same discussion we're having about the operating versus capital is also sort of bearing out on the hybrid versus electric scenario too. I mean, the electrics are cheaper also to operate than the hybrids to wash out cost differentials on the capital side if we go to that, but not when you compare this infrastructure piece. So that's sort of the big nut to crack to get there. But yeah, so I mean, it's just sort of a transition period on this technology.
Okay, Commissioner Arders?
Yeah, I was looking at that electric, just to make sure I was clear on the other capital cost below. That's, if we went all electric for this project, this would be required to handle that. If we don't do that, we don't do electric, this infrastructure here that we're talking about, is that the kind of investment you're talking about here that would be used for any electric buses that we buy?
For additional electric buses that we buy.
So this capital here is really kind of a fixed cost capital investment for electric vehicles for this project or for any other ones we buy.
At least the first two lines, yeah, the $10 million worth of investment. That's the estimate we're going with right now. We're trying to refine that. But $10 million at this facility to charge more buses, more electric buses than we've got now, or that we have on order.
So it's for this purchase, that's an incremental increase, but really it's an investment in PSDA's infrastructure for not only this project, but for any other.
Yeah, that's true. It wouldn't just benefit this project, right?
So if I may add, as Brad mentioned, internally, we're looking at what the facility here needs for electrical upgrades. I am also working very closely with the local Duke Energy district engineers and kind of cluing them in as to what the future will look like, simply because we don't want to surprise them, and certainly we don't want to be surprised that the required electrical infrastructure to deliver the power we will need is not in place. So we work very closely with them. They are working internally with themselves. We're producing a document that really starts quantifying what is existing and what is going to be needed.
Okay, any other questions?
All my questions were answered, thank you.
Okay. I'd just like to also indicate, as you know, I've been an advocate from the whole time I've been on the board with regard to first hybrids and now electric. We have a duty as a public entity to serve the best interest long-term of our community. And going backwards with regard to technology is simply not the way that we need to create and develop our image with the public. And we've been an innovator and a leader, not only in Florida, but around the country with regard to our innovations, and we need to continue to do that. So I personally am very much opposed to going backwards in terms of technology with regard to a diesel. No matter how much diesel improves, it still is old-fashioned. It still doesn't do the kind of thing that we need to do to develop ridership and public support for our organization. So I would suggest that even looking at diesel-only type buses is not the way we want to go as an organization. All right, do I hear a motion?
I move to approve the bus purchase for the hybrid.
I'll support
Second.
that.
Okay, we have a second and a motion. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
And
Okay.
and I would try and do a little bit more work between now and the board meeting, maybe adjustments, but for now.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks, guys, appreciate your input.
How we heartbeat.
We're gonna get the trolley now.
Yeah, now let's talk about trolleys, yeah.
Okay. The next action item is going to be recommending approval to purchase 20 new trolley buses. So we have 210 transit buses in our fleet. In your packets, you will see kind of a breakout of a sub-fleet. We have 16 2007 to 2009 Gillig 35-foot transit buses that have an exterior trolley appearance package on them. But once you board them, they look like a transit bus. As you can see in your packets, these buses are starting to approach, they are well past their useful life. You can see one sub-fleet has 966,000 miles on them. Industry average that FTA defines as the useful life of a transit bus is 12 years and/or 500,000 miles. In our application here at PSTA, our vehicles accumulate lots of miles before they actually reach 12 years. These buses, all of these buses have been overhauled twice now, and they are really facing a third overhaul where all the powertrains are replaced. We try and do as much cosmetic work as possible, but as you know, you can't keep overhauling something over and over and over again because sooner or later there's just nothing left to overhaul. So it is definitely time to look at purchasing some new vehicles to replace the entire fleet. Now, on our Central Avenue trolley service, which you'll hear is CAT, and our Suncoast Beach trolley, sometimes you will see, instead of trolleys, you'll see one of our regular buses, regular transit bus, a non-trolley bus. And the reason for that is because those two services accumulate a large amount of annual miles per year. So to be in compliant with our mandated PM inspection, preventative maintenance inspection program, we have to bring these in every 5,000 miles, which on average is every 4 to 5 weeks. So with 16 total buses, there's always going to be situations where you'll see some trolley buses and then you'll just see a regular transit buses. And at least on those two services, the trolley look and the feel, that's part of the branding for that service. What that translates to is purchasing an additional 4 buses along with the 16 for a total of 20 to make sure that at all times there are trolley buses out on that service. Now, as you can see on the screen, cost being a determinative factor for 20 replacement vehicles and keeping with the trolley appearance, look and feel for the branding of the service. Fleet maintenance went out, researched a lot of different vehicles, and found this vehicle, which is a 10-year vehicle, Altoona tested. Altoona is the federal testing site for all transit buses that go into service. This is a vehicle manufactured by Hometown Trolley. It's called the Streetcar. It's a 35-foot vehicle. It holds 32 passengers. It meets the specifications of what fleet maintenance looks for in durability, reliability, and components. It is a low-floor vehicle. It also has not only the appearance package on the outside, but also has the appearance package of a trolley on the inside, something that would be totally new for our passengers that ride on the CAD in the Suncoast Beach Trolley. If these buses look pretty familiar, it's because there is a similar vehicle that the Looper service uses and that the Jolly Trolley service uses, which is right there. So there'll be some consistency with all three services running together, which is something we've been working towards for a while. In your packets, you will see vehicle projects cost similar to what was in the previous action item. These buses will be purchased through a different state's consortium style procurement, and that will be through the State of Georgia Department of Administrative Services contract for transit buses. So I'll turn it over to Al from procurement to just give a cursory overview.
Thank you, Henry. Procurement has been working with the maintenance staff on this vehicle procurement. Procurement has reviewed the state of Georgia contract for this. The costs have been determined to be fair and reasonable. All federal required clauses, Buy America certifications, all the information that is required by us using a FTA-approved piggyback checklist, and check the box on all of that. So the contract for this, contracting mechanism for this is sound, and I agree with Henry.
Questions?
Well, I can continue.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll
Henry,
finish up.
Go ahead, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of you.
I'll present the recommendation.
Okay.
So in your packet, you'll see a breakdown of the vehicle project costs. Similar to the previous item, 20 of the hometown trolleys are approximately $426,000 apiece. You'll also see that to remain consistent with all of the other ITS technologies on our buses, we will need to go in and add those. That's about another $58,000 per vehicle. So the total vehicle equipment plus the vehicles will be $484,000. 9.7 for the total project. You'll see the fiscal impact breakout as to where and how that will be funded. It is in our approved capital improvement program at those levels.
Maybe mention delivery.
So the delivery for these vehicles for 20, first vehicle should arrive at 12 months from date of order, and the 20th would be approximately another 12 months after. So it'll be about 2 years when the last bus is delivered. We would probably be receiving one bus probably every month or so over the course of the year.
It's slower, because I guess they hand carve the seats and stuff.
It takes a lot of work to make a bus look that way.
Right. Questions? All right, let me go, have Commissioner Schulman go first, because I skipped over him before.
Thanks. So the payment is due at delivery?
Yes.
For the buses? Okay, so do we know how many buses we run on the Central Avenue trolley line? Or how many are dedicated to that service?
I don't know. Find out. Saturday.
So what I'm wondering, since we want to buy 4 additional ones so that we have the ability to maintain the look and the feel, and we don't substitute with our own buses on those lines, and I get that. But for some time, I've been starting to wonder about, with the BRT coming, will we start seeing ridership changes on the Central Avenue trolley line, and in conjunction with the Looper and whatnot, that we may not need those buses, or they may not run as frequently, and therefore, do we really need to buy additional buses at this time? That's where my thought process is going.
And not have any trouble?
No, so if without having numbers, say there's 4 buses that are on the Central Avenue trolley line, and ultimately we decide to diminish or reduce that line, or get rid of that line, then those are 4 buses that can be used to fill in on other services as needed, so we don't need to buy 4 extra at this point.
Well, generally, you know, as Henry mentioned, we have 16 trolleys today, and I think, although we can verify it's about 8 and 8. 8 are on the Gulf Boulevard Central Street trolley, and then 8 are on the Central Avenue trolley, and that's not enough. That's not enough, given that just their regular oil changes, we have to put a regular bus out there because we don't have enough spares. We are planning on reducing the frequency of the Central Avenue trolley once the BRT gets up and running, but that's already been factored when identifying a more appropriate 20% spare ratio for the 2 services, and that's how we came up with the 20. But again, we're not going to take delivery on all 20 at one time. We're going to still use these vehicles for the next 2 years.
Well, and the fact that it was waiting 2 years made it more of a pressing issue for me, because the BRT will be up and running, and we'll have, you know, ridership changes based on that. So I appreciate the comment that that change in ridership's been reflected in the thinking here. It just wasn't necessarily shared in the presentation.
That's one of the other benefits of, well, one of the other thought processes we went through about buying these more vintage-looking tourist-oriented trolleys is that we think maybe not only will the ridership levels change on the Central Avenue trolley and the BRT, but maybe the type of rider might change a little bit, in that workers might want to go on the BRT if they're trying to get to the beach, to their job, or to downtown, and maybe more tourists just in St. Pete take this thing, shorter distances, so they can handle and enjoy the wood feel of the seat.
The frequency now is about every 20 minutes, is that correct? And it runs late, I mean, which is good, because if you want to go downtown and you don't want to park, you park at Grand Central, free parking on First Ave South. When you get on the trolley and go downtown, 50 cents, and you're in business. You know? But my question is, these are diesel. What would be a cost factor if it were a hybrid? And if there's
Like they say in the Visa commercial, priceless, because they don't make one.
Yeah.
But-
oh, for
Yeah,
real?
that was going to be my question.
my
Where's the
question,
engine in this? Is this like on a truck chassis, or is this a bus chassis?
This is on its own stainless steel chassis.
Right, where's the engine?
The engine is in the rear.
Okay. All right.
So, for this particular chassis, there is not a hybrid option available.
Okay.
There is a model electric which is just coming out. Very little data on it, but some cursory projections are that it has a range of probably 4 hours, and it takes about 8 hours to recharge. So 4 hours would probably be 50 or 60 miles on a charge. So it's just that in this vehicle size and type, it's just not there yet.
Like a Nissan Leaf.
Okay, over here, Commissioner Eggers?
Yeah, I was just looking at the information you had left. It looks like, I guess Gillig does have one, to answer the question. They have a diesel, and they have a hybrid diesel.
Oh, yeah.
They do.
Okay, that was a question. Yeah, you know, I think when I saw that we were talking about 16, now 20 of these, I just assumed that was part of those were going to be pass-through options for our partner. So I made a call to talk to our trolley partners, who I think have been good partners, about that. And I mean, I would be so disappointed if I didn't hear that Viking call every time. It is your calling card.
Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. I love it. So I started thinking about, and I probably, should have asked our partner, but to me, again, with the situations we find ourselves in, and a successful partner who does tourism-oriented transit, this would be an opportunity, I think, for us to look at letting them expand, letting them do the beach service work that they do, and let them go from, I think they go to Sand Key now, but maybe they go further down. I don't know about the Central Avenue one, but we have a partner over in downtown St. Petersburg now. And, I mean, the buses they buy are a little bit different, granted, and they're a little less expensive, and they pay for them. So the $9 million that we have would, in effect, if we found complete partners for all of it, wouldn't occur. Again, I think we're looking for ways to try to save our organization dollars and let our partners who do, I mean, we're not gonna go out and buy a bunch of cars and take Uber's place and Lyft's place. They do their thing well, and that's not what we wanna do. I think Jolly Trolley does a really good job along the beach. They do a really good job in North County. That's why I think we're gonna talk about that coming up.
We are, yeah.
Maybe there's some opportunities there to expand their mark on our county and let them do what they do well. So I definitely will not support this until we've at least had that conversation.
Okay. Yeah, Commissioner Schulman?
The prices that are here, is that based on the quantity that we're looking to purchase, or is that the consortium rate? The price per bus, right? So
Price per bus is from the state of Georgia.
okay, so whether we buy 1 or 1,000, it's that price per bus. We're not buying 1,000.
That's what
Yes.
Okay.
You know,
Everyone calm.
If it was 1,000, I bet we'd get a better price.
Okay.
Take them 200 years to make.
Well, and so sharing a similar sentiment as Commissioner Eggers, and really wanting to understand how ridership will change with the VRT, I'd be in favor of a smaller purchase, also given the fact that we have a 2-year window for delivery in the first place. I just don't know if we need to necessarily be committing ourselves to that quantity with some question marks still out there.
Well, we are, Commissioner Eggers did bring that up at the last board meeting, and so we're doing an analysis. We've reached out and talked to the folks at the Jolly Trolley. We're doing a detailed cost analysis about the possibility of letting Jolly Trolley run these services instead of PSTA employees. Right now, it looks like that would be more expensive. It is more expensive per hour on our contract, even including the capital, which they include in their hourly rate. So, although they are paying for their own vehicles, we're paying for them through their hourly contract. But it's possible, and we're gonna put that numbers together so you'll have that. We don't have that ready yet, but hopefully next month we'll kind of show the ability of Jolly Trolley as an organization to handle more service. It's certainly possible. It's not really, to your point, it wouldn't affect the capital program. I mean, either we buy the trolleys or they bill us for the trolleys. So these trolleys could be given, if it looks like it's a good deal for us to hand them over to Jolly Trolley once they come in, we could do that. I mean, that's possible. That wouldn't be affected by the decision on whether or not PSTA offered it or Jolly Trolley would not necessarily affect this purchase. That's all I'm saying.
So there is a competitive product that they do use for buses that's different than what we're pricing here.
It's slightly different, right?
Henry?
I mean,
At least the question that I asked was along those lines, so that I could get kind of a comparison, but it was a 200 plus, I saw $65,000 of extra add-ons that we have. I don't know that you can even add them on to the $200,000 model that they get, that they use. I just want to make sure we're comparing apples and apples when we do that, so.
So
There's a little different bus than we do.
their buses are known as a high floor, so passengers have to climb upstairs.
Seem to like it just fine.
Right.
they do. Except for people in wheelchairs.
No, they have access to wheelchair access too.
The 7 that we have now, the Gillig diesel hybrids, we have a picture of that on here. Do they look like the trolleys, the diesel hybrids that we have?
They look just with,
What are you talking about? It looks like a bus?
they
I
look
mean,
like
it
a
looks
bus
like
with
a
a,
bus.
with a
Okay.
decoration. Yeah.
With a trolley package.
Yeah.
That's generally what it is.
Okay.
It's a transit bus that has some trim on it, the wood.
Yeah.
What I call the hat that sits on it.
Yeah.
But Brad, to your point, if that's what you're doing, you're gonna do that financial analysis to see how it looks, compares.
Yeah.
That's what what's, number one, that's what I'd ask for. Number two, they do what they do well, which is, forget the money just for a minute, just the cost. But they're, so it's just something that we should be asking. And whether it's a cost-driven or market-driven, and that's why I'm glad we're doing it. So, and to the cost comparison, maybe it all shakes out that it's very similar.
Yeah.
I look forward to that analysis.
Any other questions?
Quick question.
Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
Al, the question's for you. If we order 10, is the price change? Does it go up? Is the price per vehicle more?
It's the same cost per vehicle whether you order one or.
Okay. And I guess I'm wondering why we ordering 20, why don't we just order 10, since the time frame to take so long to order them?
Well, won't that delay the other?
So, the reason why the time frame is so long is they are only able to build about 200 vehicles per year, so there are other people who have placed orders of agencies around the country. So really, securing a production slot for PSTA's order, that's what would dictate how long the total time frame is. So if a 20-bus order was submitted, they could place that in their production cycle, prepare for it. Splitting it up, you could get an order of 10 buses, and then it could take 6 months to maybe a year to get, additionally, to get the other 10. So it's just really securing space for them to produce those.
That's all, Mr. Chair.
One last question.
Yes, go ahead.
When do you anticipate having that kind of discussion, analysis? Are we talking a month away? Are we talking 2 months away? Where are we in that?
I'm gonna look to James and Jelly Trolley.
We can be ready as soon as possible. Within the
Hopefully next month.
Within the next
So
month,
next
sure,
board meeting.
absolutely.
Not the one in 1 week, but October.
that's
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
September.
So can this purchase wait till that discussion?
Yeah, I mean, we have the analysis that Commissioner Schulman is asking about, where the justification for 20 versus some other number, even with the reduction in central avenue trolley, we've done all that analysis. I know that. I don't, but we could delay on this and present both analyses, the quantity and the cost comparison and other issues related to our Jolly Trolley contract bring this back to you at the October Finance Committee and then October board meeting. That would be fine.
Okay. Any other
Sanford
questions?
Beach will not be very happy because they hate seeing the regular buses out there.
That is not a top concern.
Okay.
There's no what?
Top concern, if St. Beach is happy.
Just let me know.
Commissioner Bennett, you have any questions?
No, I kind of agree that we should defer this for 2 months and we'll talk about it again in October.
Henry, I don't know if you know this, and Brad, I don't know if you know this. How many miles is a typical life expectancy on the truck chassis style bus like trolley that the Jolly Trolley uses versus the ones we're talking about here? That's one question. The second question is, how many miles are they running their buses on an annual basis? Because my concern is that those are going to wear out quicker than a bus style operation, especially if they were to run the length of Gulf Boulevard as Commissioner Eggers is suggesting. That's a lot of additional mileage compared to what they're running those vehicles now. And I don't know if that type of bus will would stand up to the longer routes and the more sustained schedule that we're currently running on the Gulf Boulevard Run.
Good question.
So if they had to change to this style bus in order to operate the Gulf Boulevard Run, then they would have to buy these more expensive vehicles as well, correct?
So let me confirm that before I answer what Jolly
Yeah,
John's
yeah,
chassis
we
is
got,
rated
since we're
for.
gonna be delayed anyway, if you could add that into your mix of questions to be answered, I'd appreciate that. And the other thing is, of course, the personnel costs and so on associated with having them involved in a longer route and more. They have to go out and hire people, and what would that do to our union contract? Things like that if we had fewer operators. So those factors need to be considered as well. Okay? Any other questions on this? Or we're going to table this till October, is that correct? Okay, thank you. Okay. So now we're on the amendment to the ICMA, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, Debbie, would you take that?
Well, good morning, everyone. PSTA offers a deferred compensation program to its employees. And normally, programs where the employee, or in this case, almost all the employees are paying it in themselves, we don't bring to the board, because it's no cost to PSTA. But back in 1996, a few years after I was born, I'm sure, but back in 1996, it was brought to the board to have this deferred compensation program with a company called ICMA. ICMA allows for loans to be taken out for hardship only. What we want to do is open up the loan program to include loans, up to 3 loans for other purposes that would be repaid over a 15-year period and come out of the employee's paycheck. So that's the change that we're looking for today in this program, and I think it'll be a beneficial option to the employees.
What happens if the employee leaves?
If the employee leaves, they would have to switch over to having the loan directly with ICMA.
It's their money. Yeah.
It's their money, it's,
Okay.
you know.
Any other questions? Yes, Commissioner Scholl?
So the interest on those loans is paid
By
by the
the-
employee back to the employee.
That's correct.
And you said there's no fiscal impact, there's no cost from a payroll perspective as far as servicing the payments back to ICMA or anything like that? It's
There's
all-
no cost other than our time to do so.
Okay. Have we had employees that are taking part in the deferred comp plan ask for a
We've
change
had
to
several
loan status?
employees ask for that.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
What would be some of the examples that they would use this for? Could they use this to, buy a house or
Yes.
something that long? Or
It could,
we're talking basically much shorter
It could
duration type
be for
thing?
anything, so it could be for someone who has short-term needs for, let's say, medical costs, could be for buying a car, could be for down payment on a mortgage or for buying a house.
Mhm.
So it's all covered by the IRS code.
Right,
you know.
exactly, yeah. And the other question is, what's the tax impact when you do this kind of thing for both the company and
Nothing on us as the employee, there isn't any impact. When you take money out of your paycheck to put in deferred comp, it's pre-tax. So you're setting money aside so it's a benefit to the employee, is an option for retirement benefits. What's really interesting is you've got people who may want to borrow it for different purposes I just mentioned. There may be people who want to borrow it, you're paying yourself back, but you may invest it elsewhere at a higher interest rate,
Mhm.
and then pay yourself back and kind of get a double bonus there.
Mhm.
But most of our employees will want to use it for practical purposes.
There is potential tax implications for the employee if they don't pay the loan back.
Right. Okay, but there is no, they could borrow the money basically on a pre-tax basis and pay it back on a pre-tax basis, no taxable impact to the employee when they take a loan. like
Right, if
that.
they pay it back according to the, in accordance with the IRS code, then there's no tax implications. They lose out on the earnings on the money
Mhm.
while it would have been invested in their retirement plan.
Right.
If they don't pay it back, there's potential,
Right,
then there's
that's
penalties and interest that they have to pay, because then
Right.
it's essentially they took an early withdrawal from the plan.
Okay, all right. Commissioner Bennett?
Is this considered part of the labor contract?
No.
So if we decided a year from now to take it away, there would be no repercussions with the union? Or
Right, we wouldn't bargain this. I don't think this isn't available for union employees.
Right.
This is
No,
management. This is non-union employees.
So whose funds are in this again?
This is the employees' funds.
Employees put their own funds in.
Right, and under the IRS code, they can borrow, I believe it's up to 50% of the amount that they have in the account.
And that's still gonna be the case. That's
Right.
not changing, IRS, so they
Right,
can
that-
borrow up
that's-
to 50% of that. Yes.
Okay.
But the employer has the option as to whether you allow these types of loans or not.
What's the downside to this?
No downside, I don't think.
In worst-case scenarios, very worst-case scenario, you have many of these loans out and employees don't repay it and you don't administer the process to take the money out of their payroll, they could declare the entire program to be non-compliant with the IRS code. That's the huge risk to an employer. Very unlikely, we'd have to not administer the repayments. So it would be if you had a number of employees that just didn't repay. And if we didn't do payroll deduction and we weren't administering the payroll deductions to pay back the loans.
There's actually, there's a
Like
greater
that.
risk to the actual employee.
Yes.
If they were to lose their job, yes, the loan can switch over, but if you've lost your job, you might not be able to service that loan, in which case then it becomes a distribution. It's then taxed, it's penalized. So there's a greater risk for employees taking on these loans.
Right.
So also the hope is that they're fully aware of those risks, as they implement it.
Right.
And I don't know, it's 50%, but is it also capped at $50,000 like
I believe so.
401Ks are?
I believe it is.
Okay, so if you had 200,000 in there, you still could only take 50, not 100.
Yeah, max to 50% or $50,000,
Okay.
Thank you.
whichever is less.
Any other questions? Okay, the other side of the coin then is, with all the negative things, the other side of the coin is that this would possibly be an attractive benefit that might get us more access to quality employees for drivers and other.
It wouldn't apply to drivers again.
Okay.
It's only
Drivers, okay, outside. Okay,
This is
yeah.
a deferred compensation plan that's offered to
Yeah,
the
right.
non-union
right.
employees.
Yeah.
Yep,
But-
part of me doesn't want to encourage employees to take loans out of their future retirement.
Right.
Unless they're responsible, they're very responsible in paying it back.
Right. Okay.
Right.
All right.
I move approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay. Workers' compensation. Al?
For over 25, Al Burns, Director of Procurement. For over 25 years, PSTA has had a TPA or a third-party administrator administer our employee injury claims or workers' compensation. In June of this year, we released RFP that was in compliance with procurement policies. On July 12th, we received three proposals. One proposal, however, was considered non-compliant or non-responsive. We evaluated the proposals, and there's a matrix there that shows you how the responsive proposals ranked. Commercial Risk Management Incorporated proposal was deemed fair and reasonable, and we did the responsibility check that I spoke about earlier in the committee meeting. This is funded by PSTA operating funds, and the recommendation that I'm bringing before you is recommend approval of a 3-year contract with 2 one-year options with Commercial Risk Management Incorporated, and an amount not to exceed $270,000, and recommend authorizing CEO to exercise the 2 one-year options. Are there any questions?
Questions? Al, who's our current vendor?
That is the incumbent as well.
Okay. All right. So we've had good success with them?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Okay, do I hear a motion?
I will
Move to approve.
second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so passage unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay. Company insurance coverage. Okay.
I'll ask Diane to give
Yeah,
a
was this-
background on this.
We're back here now. All right, go ahead.
We have a self-insurance program to provide multiple coverages for PSTA, property, inland marine, crime, general liability, auto liability, public officials and employment practices liability, excess workers' comp and employers' liability, pollution liability, and cyber liability. These are all coverages that are, with the exception of the pollution liability and the cyber liability, in a package policy. We only received one proposal this year, and the director of procurement and myself met and discussed whether or not to go out to cancel this one and go out for another proposal. However, based on a couple of things, we felt it was in the best interest of PSTA to go ahead and go forward with this proposal. First and foremost, insurance policies are not like contracts that you can just say, I want to extend for 2 or 3 months. They are set annual or 6 month, generally 6 month or annual policies. So to do that would change our policy effective date, and that would just be assuming that the carrier would allow us to extend it, which I don't think they would. So we would have had to renew the policy, and in doing that, we would expose us to a penalty if that carrier were not selected, which would be approximately 25% of the premium base. Also, with the anniversary rating date, that drives our experience mod calculations and our assessments to the state, and changing those dates cause a ripple effect that takes approximately 3 years to catch up, and it would cost us additional funding. So that was the reason we decided it was not in our best interest to rebid it.
In addition, in the past, this carrier has also been the lowest cost every single time. So I think that may be yet another reason why we didn't get other proposals.
I'd like to add to that. Procurement, just as best practice, if we only receive one proposal for any type of RFP or IFP that we would issue, we go out and we ask the vendor community, hey, why didn't you bid? And some of those reasons that staff just told you is why we only received one proposal. Even though we received one proposal, we did evaluate that proposal to make sure that it met all of our needs. And once again, there's a matrix there to show you how we scored it. And they scored a total out of 1,000 points, 991 points. The fiscal impact on this is funded by operating funds. And even though we received just one proposal, there is a substantial savings of approximately $65,000 annually. So over the course of the next $65,000 per year. So times that by 5 for the life of the contract. The recommendation that we're bringing before you this morning is recommend approval of a 2-year contract with 3 one-year options with public risk insurance advisors in an amount not to exceed $3,500,000, and recommend authorizing the CEO to exercise the 3 one-year options.
Okay, questions?
Mr.
Okay.
Chair, I make a motion for company insurance coverage.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, passes unanimously. Thank you, Diane. Thank you, Al.
The next action item has to do with telecom services. I've been working with Julie, and I'll butcher her last name if I try to pronounce it, so I won't even try. I've been working with the IT director, and she's going to give the background for this solicitation.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
As you now know, I'm Julie Cagliostro. I'm the Director of Information Technology. and today I'd like to present the action item as now referenced for two 20-year telecommunication contracts. The first with AT&T in a not to exceed amount of $202,000, and the second with Verizon in a not to exceed amount of $110,000. To provide some background, the IT department is responsible for providing all of the mobile communication plans for the various devices throughout the organization. To keep it in perspective, we kind of divide them into two categories. The first is the devices that live on board the buses, and then the other are the devices that we issue to individual employees and provided the supervisor vehicles. So basically, to break this up, on board the bus, there's three types of communication. The first is the Wi-Fi that provides the passenger internet service. The second is the logic unit that provides the automatic vehicle location information as contracted through Clever Devices. The third is the fare validators for the mobile payment solution through Init. The second group, the category for the individual employees, comes in the form of laptops, iPads, and tablets, in addition to the supervisor vehicles. And these plans are required for those devices that reach outside of an area that would be normally serviced by Wi-Fi. So basically, our strategy is that we divide our plans amongst 4 carriers: AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, and Sprint, which are not the focus of today's discussion, but and we basically have developed this strategy to provide some form of fault tolerance. So if one of these individual carriers is not functioning, at least all of our mobile communications are not out of service. If there's a 4-carrier outage, we don't have a solution for that at this time. We rate the plans and the choice of the plans based on the quality of the signal and then also the cost of the plan. AT&T serves solely the bus Wi-Fi, and that's the passenger internet service. Verizon now provides, on the onboard services, the newest IBAN 4 units, which is the automatic vehicle location services, as well as cell phone plans and supervisor vehicle communication and the laptops and iPads, as we discussed. So that is pretty much my summary, and if you have additional questions, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, Al Burns can describe some of the more details of the procurement.
The procurement process for this, there's a Florida state contract, it's called Florida DMS, and there's, all the contracts on that have been competitively procured, and we're taking advantage of that with these contracts here. There's DMS 10-11, 8A, and 8C, and those are from the Florida contracts. The fiscal impact for this is this will be funded by operating funds, and once again, the recommendation is approval of a 28-month contract with AT&T Mobility in an amount not to exceed $202,000 and Verizon in an amount not to exceed $110,000. The reason that there's a little obscure 28-month is because that's in line with the term date for the state contract.
Okay. Any questions? Do we have like a backup if one of these carriers goes down, is more irritable than a customer who's working on something and it goes off? So, I mean, if bus goes into an area that's not well covered, how do we handle that? How do we handle, a situation where one particular vendor is down, and do we have a backup for that scenario?
I defer to Julie.
We're actually working on that scenario. Coverage we can't control, and as I said, we do pick the plans based on the signal quality. So in other words, we do evaluate what that vehicle or particular employee is doing, where they're traveling to, and we do locate between those 4 who has the best coverage in that area. So for the buses, you know, there are providers who actually exceed in some places along Pinellas County versus others. So that placement takes that into account. And we are working towards introducing other vendors. And as you're aware, a bus lives for 12 years. So when the bus comes into existence is when we purchase the communication equipment. And we try to continue to keep that equipment over time. We are looking at, as we introduce the newer buses, to introduce technology whereby one communication device within the bus can manage 2 carriers and provide automatic failover between the 2 as it passes either through a low signal area or one carrier goes out. So that's the reason for the best we can do
Right.
kind of.
And this is through basically the state is the lead?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I assume that they're working on that question anyway. Let's hope. All right. Any other questions? Okay, do I hear a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Alternators. Wow.
Oh, boy.
We're getting technical here, okay.
Well, Commissioner, if in the interest of time, I'll be brief with this action item. We send off alternators for the buses to be rebuilt or remanufactured. You have to be a factory qualified remanufacturer. Procurement put out a bid, and we received 2 bids, one from Electric Sales and one from Prevost. This will be for a 1-year base, 2-year option. Electric Sales and Service is the incumbent. They do a very fine job for us, because you have to be if you're factory qualified, from Niehoff, which is the brand.
Okay.
So the recommendation is a one-year base, 2-year option, not to exceed $190,000, and recommend authorizing the CEO to exercise the 2 options.
All right. Move approval. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Greyhound agreement, James, this is exciting. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, good morning.
Hi.
Thank you, and I'll get us wrapped up and out of here. This is actually a feel-good story. This is a win-win for our customers, partnering with Greyhound, providing our customers the options at our customer service center in Pinellas Park to not only be able to travel locally throughout the county, but also to connect and travel about the state and wherever Greyhound travels. So our customers will be free to move about the country. I think I stole that from somebody, so they're not watching. I don't want to get sued. So I'm here before you to ask for your approval for a license agreement and separately an easement amendment between Pinellas Suncoast Transit Authority, Greyhound bus lines, and the shops at Park Place for the purpose of operating and maintaining a bus customer service center for Greyhound Bus. And again, this is in Pinellas Park at the shops at Park Place, AKA the entity we're dealing with is known as KB Parkside. There should be 2 attachments, a license agreement and an easement amendment agreement. If they're not in there, we'll have to fix that. Let me just start out by saying, before I give you a little bit of the background, the reason I'm coming before you today is even though we're just saying, hey, listen, we want to be able to have Greyhound Bus come through our customer service center 4 times a day, that's pretty much it, and be able to allow one of their boots on the ground customer service representatives to sell tickets and validate tickets. We're asking for your approval because this is an amendment to the easement agreement with KB Parkside. It revises a legal interest in the property held by PSTA, and the license agreement with Greyhound restricts that interest in the property. So therefore, the approval of these agreements will in fact require the PSTA board approvals. So Greyhound came to us last November. They were currently servicing in St. Petersburg off of MLK and 2nd Avenue North, closer to downtown. Their leasing agreement was up, and whoever owned that property, I believe, wanted to redevelop. So they needed to get out of there. They have a model around the country where they've worked with other transit agencies and existing hubs and other areas, whatever city or state calls their transfer city, to partner and to kind of neighbor in a way. And it works well because you have local traffic, you also have state and access to go beyond cities and towns. So they brought this model to us. We took them on a field trip. We took them to several different places, and they liked Shops at Park Place. What they liked about it is the lighting. We have security in place. We have our building. We have a nice customer service window. We have amenities for their customers can use in the form of restrooms. You have shopping, dining, and entertainment right there. So if you get there super early, waiting for your Greyhound bus, you can go see a movie, go shopping over at Target's, hit one of the restaurants, what have you. So it's a good partnership, and of course we have many of our own current local PSTA bus routes that come through there as well. So they decide on Shops at Park Place, and then we've had to work behind the scenes to determine what that agreement needs to look like. So the license agreement essentially says where they can pull their bus, what times a day, what access they'll have inside of our building, and then what the maintenance requires are. We're just required to present them a clean operating spot. We maintain all of our operating, electrical maintenance inside and outside, and then in addition to that, any insurance requirements that they need to maintain and that we need to maintain. So that's specified in the licensing agreement, just pretty much the terms of use, operating, insurance requirements, and then just cause for termination by either party of that license agreement. Separately, with KB Parkside, since we don't own that area, we did have to go to the property management and just get their blessing that, one, we absolve them of any type of harm or claims or anything, and they're just acknowledging, okay, PSTA, this is the space we let you use, and now if you want to grant Greyhound some access to that, then that's on you. So separately, you'll see the easement amendment agreement signed between PSTA and KB Parkside, which represents Shops at Park Place. And that's pretty much it. We'll have a Greyhound representative here at the board meeting to talk about their side of the partnership, give you a little bit more background on them, how they run, and hopefully, if all goes well and you all approve, we'd love to do maybe a ribbon cutting and or some type of positive press release to let our customers know that this is a great new thing for them that we'll offer up.
Mr. Chair, finally, some money coming in, I like it.
Yeah.
And money coming in.
This will solve our fiscal problem.
Like
40,000 a year. I love
I'd just like to ask a quick question on this. Brad and I talked about this the other day.
Yes, sir.
We need to kind of build this up. I mean, there should be some synergy here where we help them and they help us in terms of gaining ridership.
Absolutely.
The one question I have, though, is the way our buses pull into that station, they're pulling in and they have a right side exit along the sort of the road side.
Correct.
Opposite the terminal. Where and how would we handle a Greyhound bus coming in when there may be 2 or 3 PSTA buses there as well?
Right now, we're going to have the Greyhound bus pull in adjacent nearest the customer service building, and we'll go out there and we'll probably mark and paint up a pad for them to go to. We'll also monitor it first, just because it is so new. There may be some unforeseen things that we didn't think of. So we'll make adjustments along the way. We'll have our safety team out there along with our transportation team. If we need to modify, we'll modify. But we think we can have them do a pickup that's away from our main bus traffic.
Okay.
Well,
Go ahead.
You go ahead, John.
I was just gonna ask the current operating status of the location, cleanliness, and how it operates, is that's already within what Greyhound is looking for in our agreement with them?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, so we don't have to do anything additional
No.
to the facility?
No, they want to be able to maybe put some vinyl, like a Greyhound logo and a sign up to represent their space at the
I would say
window.
our facility is an upgrade over where they were in St. Pete.
Absolutely.
And I don't necessarily disagree, I just want to make sure that we were within our current state, not having to do anything major to.
Yes, sir. No addition for us.
Real quick. And there'll be baggage loaded onto these buses too, I take it. Typically, people, do they do it, or do the Greyhound employees load the baggage? I don't know how that works.
I believe the Greyhound bus operator will come out and lift up the hatches and assist when needed to. For the most part, folks can just put their own bags in there.
Questions?
Oh,
You can get a ticket to go to Orlando from Pinellas Park.
Yeah, I know that.
$21.
Jacksonville. too.
Whoa.
And the one thing I'll add is we're kind of sandwiched in between Sarasota and Tampa. And Tampa would be the next major hub,
Okay.
where then they'll have additional runs that can go, Miami, Orlando, that type of thing. So we're kind of more or less a stop, but we're not as a major hub, but just kind of a stop along the way.
Okay. All right, questions? All right, move approval. Good.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, passes unanimously. Thank you. Commissioner Akers didn't vote.
Yeah, but he was.
He was already, yeah. Okay. All right, very good.
Thank you, Jane.
More places for sale
Thank you.
Yeah.
as a shopping cart.
Okay, I guess that's it, guys. We're 5 minutes over. Is there anything you want to add, Brad, to the reports and so on?
Ridership was up.
Yep.
That's always good news.
Yeah.
That's about it. That was largely due to the fact that we went to a week shape.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, everyone.
We're adjourned.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
You're off the hook,
Meeting in
Sammy.
5 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's just.
Looks like only part of the
And then
staff is here.
Yeah, I think I'm going to use my agreement too as a attachment. as an exhibit.
Josh, how many we have?
Yeah, okay, let me see if I can.
One hand left.
Yeah, it's in here somewhere, but only as a.
How are you, sir? Yeah, things in the big city. Oh,
Thank you. Thanks for staying
hanging in there.
I hope I said everything fairly. Not too overcomplicated.
There's hardly anybody here.
Thank you for,
You can run it, you got the experience. Hey, how you doing?
quite the project.
A lot harder than it.